formerly under the control of the Kwa-Zulu government. According to legislation, the land under the trust vests in the Ingonyama, the Zulu king Zwelithini, who is the sole trustee acting on behalf of communities defined in the Ingonyama Trust Act. It's become a highly charged political issue, as you heard in that package there, after that independent high-level panel headed by former President Kgalema Motlanthe recommended that the trust should be dissolved and the law that established it on the eve of South Africa's liberation in 1994 be repealed. Public hearings into the possibility of expropriation of land without compensation were held in Durban today, and that meeting was convened by the National House of Traditional Leaders. Now, its chairperson Sipho Mahlangu joins us now from our Durban studios. Good evening to you and thank you for talking to us. Let's start with the comments that we saw in that package by Inkatha Freedom Party leader Inkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who has warned that the scrapping of the Ingonyama Trust would be akin to disempowering traditional leaders. Is that a position you share?
Look, we said as traditional leaders, after people took a pot shot at us as the sector, and feeling that our powers are eroded by the statements that have been uttered and some of the policy positions that our government is taking. We thought that let us sit and come up with a position as traditional leaders, because we believe that as traditional leaders, our role is to administer people and administer land. So when government wants to take a position that seeks to separate us from the land or take away the powers and the functions that we have on the land issue, it will seriously disempower us and disempower our own communities. We've always had a lot of people that want to make us fight with our own communities, that seeks to separate us from those people, where they would say that as traditional leaders, we are not necessarily owners of land. We've never said that we own land as traditional leaders. We said we own land with our own communities. So we are never, we should never be separated from our own communities. So we don't take kindly to anyone that would want to separate us from our communities. And I think that has been the stance that traditional leaders took today, to say that we would not allow anyone or anything that will separate us from our own communities, especially when it comes to land, and expose our people to something that has not been properly discussed with them.
There is a view that the traditional leadership issue is a mere red herring, that this is not about traditional leaders, but in fact it's about an arrangement that is unique to one man and one man only, and that's the Zulu king. No other traditional leader enjoys so much control over such vast tracts of land in this way.
Look, it is not an issue about one man. I mean, if you look at the Ingonyama Trust, it was formed, yes, it has been there for a long time, and it was also enacted within this democratic government. I've always heard people saying that it was enacted during apartheid. The very same government, passed that legislation. It went through all legal processes that go through a legislation. So Ingonyama Trust is a government entity. So, and it reports and accounts to government and its own community. So we are surprised now all of a sudden, because it may be benefiting others, to now say that Ingonyama Trust land benefits only one person. I mean, if one deals with the Ingonyama Trust board,
if I may come in there,
that person will be dealing with all traditional councils.
May I ask you then to name any other arrangement that is similar to the one that Ingonyama Trust has in terms of how it's constituted, if you say that this isn't just about one man?
Look, I think the Ingonyama Trust, as I had said, it was done through legislation, and because it was something that that was done to manage the Kwa-Zulu Natal land issues. It's something that has been there when the Kwa-Zulu Natal government was there, and within this new government, legislation was passed that supported the establishment of Ingonyama Trust. Even the board, it is appointed by this very same government. So it is a government entity, and if you go to other areas, traditional communities are administering their land with traditional councils. even though we have different systems. But I think there's nothing that stopped other provinces to come up with legislations that favored their own traditional councils.
With respect to this, that explanation is disingenuous. There is, in fact, no other arrangement similar to this one. You can't name it after I've asked you. This was, in fact, a political arrangement. It was done so for expediency. It was concluded by the National Party and Inkatha, and it's always been a bitter pill for the ANC to swallow.
I wouldn't agree with that. It was an agreement that included even the very same ANC government. So we can't now say that it was an agreement between the National Party and the ANC government after the history that was given to us by Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi in terms of what transpired, towards the establishment of Ingonyama Trust. It was not that, and I think if you would go back to history, the issue of Ingonyama Trust Board was not an issue before elections, but what the IFP wanted then was that there must be international mediation, of which that's what was agreed on for them to go to participate in the elections. So it was not about Ingonyama Trust land, because when we are talking about this land, we are talking about land that is in all traditional communities. So when you take away land in rural areas, you are taking it away from whom, for whom, because that land belongs to those communities. And the traditional leader that is there is holding that land in trust. So what we've been saying as traditional leaders, that 13% of the land that is in our areas must come back to us as traditional leaders and our communities, and we must hold that title deed as traditional leaders and our communities, and we'll decide in terms of what tenure system that we need to have with our own communities. And we don't want anyone to be dictating to us in terms of a tenure system that we need to have as traditional communities.
Again, I put it to you that this isn't an issue about traditional leaders in general. It's about this particular trust and the Zulu King. And let's talk about just how some of it works. I mean, how can the Zulu King, for example, be the sole trustee on the basis of some paternalistic claim of stewardship over the inhabitants of the area, whilst the trust not only pockets all the money, it does so at the expense and from the very people who are meant to benefit from it?
I wouldn't agree with you, because, I mean, legislation was passed, there was a board that was appointed that is headed by a judge, and I don't believe that you would have anyone that would understand the law better than a judge that is heading the Ingonyama Trust. And I don't think that you would have a judge that would preside over an institution that is unconstitutional and that seeks to oppress its own communities. I mean, in KZN, they agreed that there's only one monarch as a province, and that monarch is the king of the Zulus. So in other areas, you have traditional leaders that are in control of the land that is under them with their own communities. And in terms of the accountability of the funds that are there, I mean, there are processes that government has, and the trust board accounts to parliament, so they are held accountable in terms of what they do with the resources that are in the trust. And if there is anything wrong that happens there, I believe that we can't now just rubbish everything because there's an element that may be wrong within the trust. We need to sort out what may be identified as something that is wrong. We've even invited the people that are saying that the trust must be scrapped and that the trust must not be there, so that they can come and engage with us and show us where the trust is wrong, and so that we can have a proper discussion. But unfortunately, all those that are saying that did not show up in this meeting, where we're hoping that we'll find common ground on issues that they are raising around the Ingonyama Trust Board.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Of course, there have been many objections to how all of this operates. Even COSATU in Kwa-Zulu-Natal has said that the way this works does need to be questioned. That was, of course, the chairperson of the National House of Traditional Leaders, Sipho Mahlangu. Back to Francis.